Okay, now we're going to talk about the Pro options. We've got the main menu in front of us, which obviously has on it the preset programs, basic adjustments, which we covered earlier, and now the little arrow is pulsing next to Pro options. So by hitting enter, we've got page 1 of 2 pages of Pro options, which are broken up into categories. The first one on the list here is audio. So to find out what is in the audio Pro options, we press enter, and the first one is ratchet pinpointing. So we want to discuss that, Keith?
Sure, I think we should. Ratchet pinpoint is used when you find a target and you go over it repeatedly. The signal, which is a U-shaped signal, is going to desensitize each time you go over it, so that what used to be a broad signal is going to become a very narrow signal, and it's useful in pinpointing.
To make it easier to pinpoint.
Right. Right.
Notice on here too, it says on or off, so ratchet pinpointing actually is on, I think, in most of the programs, but this can be varied by you having the ratchet pinpoint taken off. And the advantage to that for me is if you take the ratchet pinpointing off, you see the total size of the target.
That's
so that as you come in with the trigger squeezed and listen to the target, you're going to hear the whole circumference. So in this, what may have been a target as large as a horseshoe may turn out to look small when you've got ratcheting on. This way you can trace it first, and then you release the trigger over the target, come back on the trigger, and it pumps it down manually. The ratcheting is done automatically, manually is done by the user with the trigger.
Right, and manual will actually override ratchet pinpointing when it's on, if you click the trigger down.
Right, you can actually do it without switching it off.
Correct.
So I would think the proper way to actually ratchet manually is to pinpoint a signal, move the loop over the signal, stop, release the pinpoint trigger, pull it back again, and anytime you pull that pinpoint trigger, the detector retunes itself. So what it's actually doing is when you stop over the target, release the trigger, pull it back again, it tunes the target down smaller and gives you a more precise pinpoint. You may need to do that a couple of times to get it down small enough to where you know exactly where it's at.
In the dead center, right.
Right.
That covers ratchet pinpointing pretty good.
Okay. What's the next one?
You want to pop it there?
Sure.
And we press the down arrow, of course, to get to the next one.
Down arrow takes us down to the next one, which is SAT speed.
Right.
And we have that analog dial on there, which is a graphic, and it shows in this particular program that SAT speed is set at the maximum of 10, which would be very quick recovery.
And let's just talk about SAT, what it means to begin with. The SAT stands for self-adjusting threshold. So it keeps that threshold going no matter what the ground conditions are. When you move your loop back and forth over the ground will change from place to place. Your threshold could oscillate by going up or down and give you this wobbly feeling, losing threshold, gaining threshold, which gets in the way of hearing your target. So if the ground is heavy, such as in prospecting, I mean heavy mineralization, lots of iron mineralization, that ground's going to change rapidly and fast. So you need a fast SAT so that the ground will recover the threshold through the SAT and you get a constant sound. Then you can hear an interruption of that sound, which is your small gold nugget. So that's why we would use a very fast SAT.
And we would use it in beach too, because we normally have salty conditions there and we're going to need to recover quickly. But perhaps in relic hunting or other areas where the ground is going to allow it, we could sometimes get more depth if we had a slower SAT speed.
Yeah, SAT is a trade-off of depth. So that the slower the SAT speed, the deeper it goes. But if it can't handle the ground, you're not going to hear anything anyhow.
Right.
So you might as well get the speed that's optimum. And we've chosen speeds that are optimum for those categories of beach hunting or coin hunting or prospecting from experience. You can vary it a little bit to your own personal need and the personal ground condition. Right. Could I mention one thing, which was sort of interesting? We may have overlooked it earlier. That little knob there is not just a knob, but the little, it moves around as your numbers change. So as your SAT speed is going to maximum, it's turning clockwise, and as you lowered it, it's turning counterclockwise. So you can see exactly the percentage of control you have on each one of those little knobs. Okay. What's the next one on there?
Pushing the down arrow again, we come down to tone ID. And in this particular situation, it's set to off. It's an on-off option.
Right. And what's tone ID as far as you're concerned?
Well, tone ID will give you a low tone on a smaller denomination coin, and as you go up in the sizes of the coins, it actually gives you a higher pitch on each coin. A nickel will be a lower tone, a dime a little higher, a quarter a little higher than that. What it actually lets you do is recognize coin sounds with not even looking at the meter. You'll be hunting along, you hit that high-pitched tone, you know that that's probably a good target.
That's like an alert, coin alert is what you're saying.
Right.
Now, weren't you telling me yesterday that, and I don't know how I missed this, I asked how many sounds there were, and you said there's as many sounds as there is frequency, tones, that's 250.
Well, each VDI number is going to have its own tone.
So
Depending on whether that VDI number is accepted or rejected in your discriminate program, all of the accepted ones are going to come up with a separate tone. So perhaps you get a slightly different tone on successive swings on any given target. But in general, the higher conductivity targets, your dimes and quarters and half dollars, are going to have much higher tones than, say, a nickel, which would be a lower tone. And it works the same with the relics. If you had, say, a 69 caliber mini ball, it's going to have a higher tone than a 58 or a 54 caliber mini ball.
There's just a lot of more information to determine whether you're going to dig or not.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, what's next on the control there?
Pushing the down arrow again, we come to VCO audio, which is also an on-off control. In this particular situation, it's set to off. VCO audio is used in pinpointing a lot. Randy, I know you use it.
I love VCO. That's probably one of my favorite options on the entire detector. Many people have problems pinpointing. In the regular position with VCO off, you get a solid tone when you pinpoint all the way across the target. It doesn't vary. From the time you come upon the target to the time you go over the target, the sound is the same. With VCO, which VCO actually designates voltage controlled oscillation. What that does is, it's like a ramp sound. When you come up on the edge of the target, you start hearing a growl sound. As you continue on across the target, the pitch rises and gets sharper and louder and higher, a higher tone, and then as you cross over the target and continue on, it starts dropping off again and becoming a lower sound. So what that does for you, you know when you get that highest pitch in an X configuration, you know, crossing the target in both ways, when you get that highest pitch, you know you're dead center of the target. So it really simplifies pinpointing and makes it much more precise.
Right, right.
It also has an advantage of being able to recognize whether a target is shallow or deep as soon as you pinpoint it, as soon as you cross it. If it's a high pitch, you know that it's going to be probably a shallow target or a large target. If it's a low growl sound when you pinpoint it, you know it's going to be deep. Without even looking at the meter, you know it's going to be deep.
And of course, it could surprise you sometimes with these new detectors. A shallow target might be 5 inches deep, and you get a pretty good hit on a VCO audio. Okay?
Okay. Next one down is going to be our absolute value, and I know, Jimmy, that's used with some of the loops that you manufacture.
Yeah, well, there is a loop called Bigfoot. We won't go into a commercial here. But Bigfoot is a loop that works in the discriminate mode on the entire 15 inches of the, or 18 inches, pardon me, of the length of the loop from tip to tip. But when you switch to all metal mode, the front half of the loop has always stayed positive, and the last half of the loop goes negative. Well, that's how you pinpoint with it. But if you wanted to search in the all metal mode, which would be you'd call the pinpoint the all metal mode, this allows you to turn both halves of the loop on positive. And so you just take absolute value and push the up arrow and it'd be on. That's the only use for that. And you wouldn't want to use it with any other loops because it could unpredictably mess up what you're doing.
Sure.
It's made for a specific loop.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Going down one more time, we have modulation. It's an on-off control, and in this particular situation, it's on. Randy, do you want to explain modulation to us?
Modulation, a lot of people like to get a softer sound on a deeper target. With modulation on, you get that. The farther away the target is from the loop, the softer, and the amplitude of the target is smaller, so that it actually sounds farther away from the loop. If you take modulation and turn it to the off position, the detector tries to hold the same gain or the same sound on a target, whether it's shallow or deep. So that's kind of a personal preference, what you like to hear in a situation like that.
I might mention, though, that if you've got a little bit hard of hearing, and as we get older, we find out our hearing we get a little bit of loss. That modulated audio is something that I like to use too, but when you get down those marginal signals, you're probably better off leaving modulated audio off, so that you can hear full target response on all those signals.
With the modern headphones, the